hard to believe that it's already time to do another year-end video, and this year, 2022, went by both quite quickly and quite slowly. It was a year of great ups and downs personally for me, and a memorable one ultimately in very good ways. This video is comprised, it's not a top 10. I'm not even sure there are 10 things in it. Maybe there are. It's when I sat down to think about what was the best thing that happened game-wise for me in 2020 in various categories or areas. It was like, this video is like the first thing that popped into my mind, the thing that I remember playing or using or wanting to use or thinking about. So that's what's in the video, and I think in all cases that everything in this video does have its own video on my channel, so I will put links to those things in the description or if I can, in a link above. There isn't an order here because they're just very different categories. I've done this in years past where it's just a type of thing that's the best of the type of thing. So there's an order obviously to the video because it's a video, but this is not a ranking system per se. So with that said, let's get going into the best or the most memorable of 2022 for me game-wise. By far the most memorable non-fantasy role-playing game that I encountered this year was Fallen by Perplexing Ruins. This is described as Baroque and grim fantasy tabletop RPG. It's not a solo game per se, but built into the material are a lot of solo support, including these amazing oracle cards that are a combination of visual as well as verbal cards with options for places and answers and prompts in a way. And in fact, the use of cards in this game as supporting material is fantastic. That for me, especially as a soloist, I like having something physical. It makes it feel more like a game, as I've talked about a lot. So these are examples of weapons cards that you could optionally use. You don't have to use the cards, but you can use the cards. And something I didn't have when I did the video, these are enemy cards, and they just add so much to the theme here of this kind of, well, to me it feels like a very American folklore kind of scary scarecrows and headless horseman type of feeling in the game. And it comes with an entire city and adventure supplement. And I think when I played this for the video, I think we started in the city, as I recall, and we were going somewhere. There's just a lot of random tables, and it's just really refreshing to be playing in a world that is not sort of fantasy based, and instead you think of ravens and farmsteads, and I think you can see here just having this card, it really does make the material come alive, and the way there's a flavor text or poetic discourse and direction matter to thee, discourse and direction belong to me. These little touches of lyricism in the material serves to further the theme. And the generators here for the solo player are just really helpful to quickly create an outside setting, a city setting with a theme and room types and things. And these details that you get, it's just enough support to allow you to get into the world. And part of the reason that I really like cards like this is you could quite simply, just if you have a character or characters, have just a random your random deck of enemy cards and your random deck of these oracle cards and simply just pull up 2 cards, and from these 2 cards either start a story. We have a gray flay spider here, a shadow fell, though no eclipse it was. And we have these 2 pictures here of places and some suggestions of words here: a relic, an elixir cache, a sinkhole. Just even these 2 things enough could be setting you out on a story, or certainly as you played through a story, be enough to carry you through. And it's all just so thematic. It's not fantasy. There's sometimes which I'm just ready to get out of the fantasy genre. And I've played a bunch of games this year that are outside of fantasy, but Fallen is the one that came to my mind first when I thought about what was the setting and the best implementation of a setting that was non-fantasy, and by far it was Fallen. For a board game reference, as I said before, it's like playing A Touch of Evil as an RPG. That's the feeling you get from Fallen. Every so often you buy something on a whim and it turns out to be awesome, and that was the case for me with Rangers of the Midden Vale. This is by Sean McClellan, and this is the best non-solo but solo rule set and game that I had encountered this year. Rangers of the Midden Vale takes place outside in the civilized lands of the Midden Vale, a vast and ancient land once ruled by tribes of worldlings before the kingdoms of men conquered the lands. And this is a map of the Midden Vale, and it takes you through the story of the world where you are playing characters who are rangers, who are helping the people of the Vale, who are hardy and hardworking and are suffering. And it says that it was designed with the intention for the game to be fairly episodic. The rangers travel through the wilderness, something happens, they arrive, they take care of it, and then they go. What's really awesome about it is that everything in the book is a random table. And you can play this as such by simply rolling on the events. So if you're in a forest region, you can roll your d20 plus your wisdom to get an answer, a number, and then you get a whole description of something happening. So a wandering minstrel is coming by and they're traveling alone in the forest, singing songs. It tells you what to do. On a successful intelligence check, you identify the language, you can offer some money, they will get a song, and you can heal. So it's almost like a board game in that sense, like you're pulling in a card and an event happens. Or here's something, let's see, if you're in a mountain location, you can come across this ever-burning signal fire. A massive pyre, easily the height of 2 men, burns atop a plateau. It has no dedicated caretaker. Instead, those who rest within its orange glow know to throw more wood upon it. No records of its creation, and only legends exist. And it continues on. So in this case, it allows you to perhaps rest. I mean, those happen to be 2 resting things that I came across. But of course, you could encounter enemies and things of that nature. There are also explicit encounter generators, so you can roll on an encounter generator to determine what the enemy is going to do, what its attitude is, how many of them there are. And honestly, it's almost hard for me to imagine this being played with a GM, because I feel like the GM would be just sitting there doing the rolling and then coming up with the things, much as you could do for yourself. Now, they can also serve as prompts. So for example, here outside the settlement, the rangers are made aware of a situation before they enter a settlement, be it a guard posted outside, a farmer or rancher living beyond the walls, or a missive left at a known ranger outpost. So not everything is completely prescriptive, but this just works so well for the soloist, and it's refreshing also to be explicitly always outside and wandering around. There's just a lot of variety about what can happen in all of these places. So Rangers of the Midden Vale, absolutely love this. You play as a band of capable and intrepid rangers traveling throughout the Vale to protect those that call it home from trolls, the dead, monstrous terrors, and humans who have turned their back on their kin. You have sworn an oath to protect the people of the Vale. Now get out there, Ranger. I would say you do need to create more than one character for this game, and we just look here quickly at the character sheet. You will need to get the most out of the game and to make it work, you will probably need to play with at least 3 characters because it is designed for a band of people. But it was really easy to do that, and you can look at my video about how I created the characters. But if I was going to recommend one non-solo RPG rule set to somebody who wanted to try solo, I would recommend Rangers of the Midden Vale from the games that I played this year. It's just fabulous. I played a bunch of games this year that were solo designed, and 12 Years is the one that is the most memorable to me. 12 Years is from Max Moon Games. It is a solo design, and it says you take the role of a group of adventurers referred to as a party. The Lich King lurks in the sunken castle of the south, waiting for the completion of the coronation ritual. If the ritual is not completed in time, then he is set free to lay waste upon the known world. You must assemble a party of like-minded adventurers, willing to risk your lives for the good of all. You sojourn into the wilderness on a search for a crown to appease the Lich King who is residing there, and then once he gets that crown, he will rest for another 12 years. And it says there are 2 ways to destroy him permanently. One of them is named in this book, and the other is for you to discover. It's very easy to roll up the party and get going here in this game, and it is solo designed, so it's explicitly that way. And it is just, it's a thin zine, but there's enough in here to make it feel very open. There's you can do hexploring as well as, and then you have a list of the encounters that you could have, as well as delving. So there are both of those things, and you are essentially moving through areas and rolling on encounter tables and fighting things and attempting to find things, and that's it's very basic in that regard, but it's a nice, easy game with a specific goal. We're looking here at the quick play, what's designed to be, I guess, your quick reference things that, at least to my eyes, like super, super small. So that wasn't particularly useful, but you can get a sense here of there are magic items that you can find. There's hex terrain. There's what are called friends or NPCs, hexploring creatures that you can encounter, dungeon creatures. It doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but what it does very well, and the package is lovely. So 12 Years was the solo designed game that I played this year that is the most memorable to me. When I think about non-print material, non-books that are the best supplemental material or best role-playing things that I used this year, The Deck of Many Dungeons is the one that I think about the most. This is a deck of cards, and I've got the main deck as well as an expansion here. It is a deck of cards that is a dungeon on it, as you might expect. But what's really great about it is that there are also some random tables within the dungeon, so you can use this as focusing on the details of the room. And as I did when I used this in a video, I focused on the actual things that we saw in addition to what the random table is here. And there's locked doors and just corridors here. This is a secret door that you could discover, and a monster table that you could use these monsters, or you could use your own monsters. It doesn't come with a rule set. These are just suggestions of monsters that you would perhaps encounter. And again, there are pictures that you could choose to develop or not. I like the art, I like the feel of it, and I appreciate the fact that the cards just fit together nicely. When you lay them out on the table, you get a nice looking dungeon. So there's a very, very light rules that go with it in terms of how to pull out the cards that will be your quest goal, and you can set up and decide how big your dungeon is going to be. And you could also use the picture cards here, the face cards that are labeled as rooms of increasing difficulty toward the end of your dungeon. So it makes it very easy to plan out a size of a dungeon. As I said in the video when I was using it with a different rule set, I think this is great for 4 Against Darkness, and I started making a video showing it with 4 Against Darkness, which I kind of abandoned, but I may post that at some point. The aces are entrances, and they also give you quest ideas, and it comes with some very quick instructions about how to possibly set up a dungeon. So you have your entrance, you have your quest area, and it also gives you some random tables for NPCs and quest items if you wish, and some treasures, as well as another random quest generator and random trap generator if you want. Although the traps are named, I think many of the traps are named in the cards. So of course it is a finite deck, although it is described as having millions of combinations. I suppose you could overuse it, but for me, this is definitely something that I will be drawn to and thinking about in the future when I want to just do a quick dungeon on the fly for whatever purpose, and have something that is there where the art is, have a physical dungeon laid out that's drawn by somebody way better than me, as well as having some suggestions for populating it. And honorable mention here goes to the Fate Mill die that I just got in the mail. This is the new version of something that you've seen on the channel. This was the original one that I used in a couple of videos where it was a little bit hard to read, and the designer has really upped the game in creating this oversized D20, which is also, it's hard to see a little bit in the video. Well, you can sort of see this. It's got a cool like blue color, and you can simply roll it to get any type of answer you want to a question. And it feels nice. It's nice and hefty now, and it's much easier to read than this one. I would say maybe the only downside to it is that if you're using a regular sized dice tray, you have to, allow for the fact that it is pretty big, and may need a little more space than that. But this is, you're going to see this in the coming year. It's just, I love the idea of just having dice to roll for something like this. It's sort of like this die that I have, my how, what, where, when die that makes an appearance every now and then. I have no idea where I got this from, but I love having just dice. Ooh, I got a 20. That you can roll in for oracles and things of that nature. And the Fate Mill die is volume 2 or version 2 of it is just a huge improvement over the initial one. It's a great, simple idea, but super excited to get this to the table. So these are my best non-book RPG items that I encountered in 2022. And by far the biggest pleasant surprise for me in terms of a game that wasn't on my radar at all was D100 Space by Martin Knight. Perhaps this was hyped and I just missed it, but as far as I knew, it just kind of appeared out of the blue, and it was an awesome surprise. This is a game in which you will steer a captain on a starship through a galaxy in search of fame and fortune. You will complete dangerous operations, trade, mine, and fight fierce space battles across many star systems. As it goes, you will gain wealth, recognition, and become stronger and increasingly skilled in your pursuits. And all you need is this book, a pencil, eraser, a few dice, and your imagination. This is based on D100 Dungeon System, obviously, for those who know the designer and the brand. And this is a copy of part of my game that I was playing. That was the kind of dungeon crawl aspect of it. But the game absolutely is not just dungeon crawling. It is space as well, flying between galaxies and, as it says, doing trading and encountering various events that happen, both good and bad, as well as making decisions about where you're going to go and picking up supplies and various tradable items and selling them, buying low and selling high, and you have tables to help you do that with the cargo. There is just so much in these 100 plus pages, not even just 100, just barely over 100 pages here, hours and hours of gameplay. And of course, there are the D100 tables, and you have events, and operations are the various missions that you can go on. And there are two different types of missions. There are space missions and away missions, and they are essentially correlate to the away missions are like basically dungeon crawls with goals and things that you need to do. And then the space missions are travel missions and could involve taking things places and trading and other things that you have to deal with in terms of events that you would encounter out in space, and of course, enemies that you encounter. I think what is awesome about D100 Space, and I sort of probably said this in the video that I did, that there is a way in which I think the mechanics of the D100 system are almost better suited toward sci-fi than fantasy. D100 Dungeon obviously is a fantasy setting, but there are quite a lot of procedures and rules, and as your character gains in ability, it's a kind of incremental slow burn to gain renown and reputation and experience and items and things. And there are mechanics for when you find an item, determining how damaged it might be, which then impacts how much you can sell it for, or how much you have to pay to fix it. And all of that mechanical rules for the game, I think just fits for me in a way almost better than with fantasy, which at least conceptually just feels to me like it wants to be more free-flowing. Whereas here, the procedures that you have, and they're not complicated procedures, but the procedures that you have for doing all of these various things, I think just fit very thematically into a sci-fi setting. As with D100 Dungeon, what you're doing here is you're creating a character and you're sticking with that character. And as you gain experience, again, you can build up the character and what it has. In D100 Space, you also have your own ship, and you have your starship, and you start out with this fast attack craft, which doesn't really offer you so much. And you can choose to spend money that you get in the course of your travels to upgrade your ship so that you can carry more cargo, for example, or most importantly, travel further in each segment of travel. And that becomes very important, as you'll see if you play the game, because you are managing your power level and your fuel level throughout. So there is the aspect management of it, which is something to bear in mind if you are playing the game, because you will need to do some minor calculations in terms of figuring out how far you're going to someplace and how much fuel and such you are spending to get there based on what your carry number. But overall, I love this game. I think the value for what you get in terms of the number of different missions that there are 50 different operations that you can roll on with different descriptions. The contaminated water has been infected, and this is what you are doing. And then your mission has an impact in terms of how you're traveling in the world. So it says here, for example, you can't perform a water collection until the mission has been resolved because the water is infected with micro aliens, and it's explaining how you do the mission. In this case, you have to explore until a certain number of areas have been added to the map sheet and searched, and find the filtration unit and perform a test to eradicate that. So there's a lot of flavor that is connected to the mechanics of what you have to do. Exploring till you find 10 green areas, that's going to be a long exploration, but you do get 8,000 credits for it. So that is quite a bit. And that's an example of something that would be like a dungeon crawl in essence. A space mission here. This is a mining titan. The detail of it is a strange phenomenon is contaminating rocks from the asteroid Titan in the Kilbrack system. And you need to go to that system and basically pick up some scientists, take the scientists there so that they can do some sampling and then do the mining test until you have added some of your pieces of metal to your hold, and then you have to return somewhere else to deliver the scientists there with the metal, and then you get your payment, and that's a 7,000 credit mission. So rather different, as again, a travel mission versus a dungeon crawl. And the book is just filled with those types of various operations, as well as, of course, hyperdrive events that could happen. And I'm not going to go into detail about it because I'll leave those to you to explore on your own. There's decision space in the game in terms of how you are spending your money and what you're choosing to upgrade. Is it your own protective wear, your own spacesuit? Are you upgrading your ship? You're never going to have enough money to do everything that you want to do in terms of your own upgrades. And those types of decisions can become very involving as you go. So D100 Space, I was totally surprised when I learned about this and super excited to have it in the gaming world. And as I said in my video, really happy that this says book 1, because that does provide the promise of more to come from Martin Knight and the D100 Space world. When I did my video on ultraviolet grasslands and the Black City psychedelic metal role-playing, it was almost an hour-long video. And I said in that video that I felt like I barely scratched the surface of what this has to offer. This is the role-playing game of heroes on a strange trip through mystic steppes in search of lost time, broken space, and deep rifts. The reason why I'm including it as the best setting as opposed to game is that while there are rules in this book, the majority of what this is a setting. As the book says, that the first 2/3 of the book are 32 strange locations scattered from east to west, becoming progressively stranger as the journey continues. And then the last section of the book has random tables, and the center are some rules. But really, mostly what this is, and the majority of what you see here in the table of contents, are very strange and otherworldly spheres, settings, from cities to bridges to open plains to areas of mysterious caves and such. It is a setting description that they all include a number of different kinds of random tables for what you may encounter, what it does, how you can interact with it. And the art is incredibly evocative and involving in terms of giving you a feel for this, the weirdness of this world and what you may encounter and what you may be placed in that setting to do as a mission. I talked about in my video reasons why this is almost like an RPG, a solo RPG textbook, because of the combination of very detailed environment that it offers you, flexibility of rules, and supporting random materials and roles, random tables to support some direction for solo play. But really here, what I'm focusing on is the fact that it just is a masterful, imaginative, all over the place guide to a world that has just very different kinds of places and settings, and really just flipping through it here to show you through the art really how you can see the variety of environments that are created here. I think the best the best thing to say about this is that it is so atmospheric, that it is just really majestic in its lyricism and presentation of a variety of different lands to encounter, to explore, or really just to get this book and read through it as if from page one to the end, because it is that involving and it is that literary, really, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It really has that feel to me of a literary achievement. So I can't say enough about the ways in which the Ultraviolet Grasslands just kind of gets into my imagination, and it is probably of all the role-playing books that I can think of right now, the one that I would just pick up and read cover to cover as almost an exercise in fantasy essays, or essay is the wrong word, but and short story is the wrong word too, but just settings, really. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That you can just see if you're looking at the titles and the illustrations of what is here. It goes from grand to small. It goes from eerie to majestic, and it is just a kind of miraculous output from the designer of this game, and the writer of this game, and the artist of this game. So that is Ultraviolet Grasslands, the best setting that I encountered this year. And the call out for the best re-implementation of a kind of tried and true old mechanic, and one that I actually happen not to like usually, the choose your own adventure mechanic, goes to Marching Order. This is called a solo or co-op dungeon delve, and it is a re-implementation of Choose Your Own Adventure. And I'm going to, as such, show you just quickly flipping through what will be familiar to you if you know this genre, choosing different paragraphs, making decisions, and being directed to another place based on that. What came out this year is the Master of the Onyx Tower. The original one, I don't know what it was called. I did a video on the original one, and I did a video on the newly released version. In this game, you are having your choose your own adventure, but accompanying this are characters that you play that you will be using to fight enemies that you encounter. And you are lining up the cards to represent the marching order, and there is your team versus the opposing team, and you play through encounters in conjunction with playing through stories in this book, and it is paragraph driven based on decisions that you make. You can also accumulate loot and things, and there is an additional loot table here that is involved with things that you can get from various enemies if you are lucky enough to dispense with them. As I said in the videos that I've done on the system, I think it really takes the Choose Your Own Adventure to another level, because the combination of having various characters that you can play, the tactical decisions that are made in terms of organizing your characters in order, and even deciding when and how to move around your enemies when possible for future attacks, gives a richness to this gameplay that is often absent, at least for me, with Choose Your Own Adventure books, because as much as I've tried over the course of my gaming career to love Choose Your Own Adventure, for the most part, with one sort of notable exception, and I'm going to make a video on that notable exception actually in a bit, they've always fallen flat, and I just, at a certain point, find myself just kind of making a quick answer just to get to another paragraph. I think that the genre has been not necessarily well served over the years, but the marching order system is a great exception to that. And for me, for 2022, this represented the best re-implementation of an old gaming system that I came across. And then finally, the last thing I have to say about 2022 and my gaming experience is the best gaming experience that I had in 2022, and that was the publication of my 3 books. And it wasn't planned for them all to come out in the same year, but indeed they did. And the Solo Game Master's Guide, which Modifius published, they did a just absolutely wonderful job of encapsulating my vision for what this book could be and what this book could offer to readers in terms of the look and the feel of it, as well as the content that we were able to bring together, a combination of general ideas, exercises, tips, and strategies. And I feel very grateful to have worked with them on this, and it came out in 2022 and indeed is for me part of my best, selfishly, but my best experience in the game life that I lead this year. I published Wanderings on my own with a great designer, Surface Candy Designs, who brought to life my vision for this book, which is a Gothic roll and read table of literary excerpts that can be used to establish settings, to give adventure seeds, to create NPC backstories or PC backstories. And the publication of this was also quite satisfying because it was an idea I had for a very long time, and finally got an opportunity to implement it through self-publishing it. And then lastly, the Place Underground, which is my dungeon theory essay combined with the dungeon roll table, which is another literary table that focuses specifically on dungeons, whereas Wanderings is above ground hex crawl type situation. Publication of this by LFOSR, just a beautiful edition, 2 versions of the cover here, the same content inside, and an absolutely just lovely execution and invitation from them to create something that would be in this space for RPGers, and also that came out in 2022. So I don't know that 2023 is going to bring me such a rich publication time, but for 2022, this, for me, represented the culmination of a lot of ideas I had had for a very long time, and I do appreciate the support that people have given around the projects, and it was definitely a highlight for me of 2022. So with that, I will end this video and say, as always, I thank you for your support, and a special call out to those who share my material on social media that is not YouTube, because if you're a follower of the channel, you know I don't do any other social media. I'm on this social media sort of by happenstance. Social media really isn't a thing that I pursue, and so I appreciate all of those ambassadors of Geek Gamers who help get the word out and bring people to my content from other avenues. Happy year, happy new year, and thank you as always for watching.